In the year 1505, a small Portuguese fleet set out from the Portuguese naval base of Goa. Their goal was to attack Muslim merchant vessels in the Indian Ocean. But a few hundred miles from Goa, the fleet was struck by a storm and driven far off course. Once the storm was over, the battered sailors set about repairing their ships and preparing to return to Goa when they sighted land to the east. The commander of the fleet, Lorenzo de Almeida, gave orders to sail directly towards it, and soon the Portuguese landed on the western shore of the island of Ceylon. The kingdom of Kotte, where Almeida had landed, was at the time the largest and most powerful kingdom in Sri Lanka. Its current ruler, King Veera Parakramabahu VIII, met with Lorenzo de Almeida. As the primary goal of the Portuguese was at this time trade and not conquest, De Almeida was able to convince the Sinhalese king to give the Portuguese permission to construct a trade warehouse in his capital of Kotte, thus creating trade links between the Sri Lankans and the Portuguese. Though De Almeida's fleet soon departed Kotte, more Portuguese were quick to arrive and swiftly completed the construction of their trade warehouse, which they used to house ivory, spices and other goods being exported from Kotte, and silks, perfumes, gold and similar trade items being imported in return. Thus, Portuguese traders gained a foothold in Kotte and set about expanding their influence in the kingdom. However, their activities were met with fierce opposition from the local Muslim traders, who had up to now had a monopoly on foreign trade in Sri Lanka. They would continue to undermine the Portuguese for the next decades. Matters came to a head in 1507 when the Muslim merchants at long last succeeded in persuading the king to expel the Portuguese from Kotte and tear down their trade warehouse. This act enraged the Portuguese considerably, and though the king forced the Portuguese to leave Sri Lanka, they would return in less than a decade and they would no longer be using diplomacy, but instead war. An uneasy calm fell over the kingdom of Kotte. In 1509, King Veera Parakramabahu died and was succeeded by his eldest son, King Dharma Parakramabahu IX. Finally, in the year 1518, a Portuguese fleet arrived at the harbour of Kotte, and impressed by the show of force, King Dharma Parakramabahu agreed to negotiate with its admiral. The Portuguese demanded the right to construct a fortress on Sri Lankan soil, which was granted to them. Through this agreement, the Portuguese aimed to construct a military base in Sri Lanka and pose a threat on the lands of Kotte so as to ensure the future compliance of the Sri Lankan kings. However, in order to safeguard their interests, the Muslims incited a riot in Kotte. The rioters, a combination of both Sinhalese and Muslims, attacked the Portuguese at the harbour and even fired upon the Portuguese ships with a few captured cannons. The Portuguese responded by rapidly defeating the rioters, massacring thousands before marching into the city of Kotte and burning down its Muslim quarter. In the wake of this incident, negotiations between Dharma Parakramabahu and the Portuguese broke down, and the Europeans instead set about constructing a fortress north of Kotte without royal permission. Learning of this, Sinhalese troops assaulted the fort before its construction could be completed, but were driven back by the Portuguese. At that point, King Parakramabahu realized that he could not take the Colombo Fort by storm, and instead settled his troops in for a siege. However, the Portuguese fleet occupying the Kotte harbour kept the defenders well supplied, and within a year the construction of the fortress had been completed. Nevertheless, the Sinhalese maintained the siege, and the standoff continued for another year. King Dharma Parakramabahu passed away in the year 1519, and was succeeded by his brother, King Vijayabahu VI. The new king had been aided in his rise to power by patrons among Muslim merchant class, and they pressured him to drive the Portuguese from Sri Lanka once and for all. To do so, King Vijayabahu launched a series of powerful assaults upon the beleaguered Colombo Fort, but failed to dislodge its defenders. At long last, as the year of 1520 drew to a close, King Vijayabahu met with the Portuguese captain in charge of the fort, a man named Brito, and they both signed a peace treaty to end the conflict. Its terms were that the Portuguese be allowed to maintain the Colombo Fort and continue trading in the Kotte kingdom, in return for which the Portuguese fleet would withdraw from the coast of Kotte. The terms were honoured by both parties, and in 1520 the siege of the Colombo Fort was officially concluded. Thus, the Portuguese gained a permanent foothold on the island of Sri Lanka. They seemed poised to further expand their influence in the kingdom, but the very next year, 1521, the entire Kotte kingdom would be torn apart by a mighty conflict that is known today as the Vijayabha-Kolle. It would drastically alter the course of Sri Lankan history, and it will be covered in my next video. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more content on Sri Lankan history. It helps immensely to keep the channel going. And as always, thank you for watching.